these rock formations in Quebec, Canada. And they look inside the rocks, and inside the rocks they found these fossilized organisms that they say are 4.2 billion years old. Well, they say it's 4.2 billion years old because they date the rock according to their dating methods, which, as you folks know, their dating methods don't work, but they date the rock to be 4.2 billion years old. And since they find fossilized organisms inside, and they say that these fossilized organisms are life, they say, well, there you go. Here's life in 4.2 billion year old rock. We now have determined that life evolved on planet Earth, or came into existence at least 4.2 billion years old, when the Earth was really young because it was just formed 4.6 billion years ago. So you see the headlines and people go, boy, look at this. And then Christians, they look at this and think, boy, I don't know, what do I make of this? I mean, isn't this scientific evidence? No, folks, it is not. Okay? These are conclusions that are being drawn by evolutionary scientists looking at rocks and then determining for themselves, here's what we think that means. But science, or the scientific evidence, does not conclusively say that at all. But first I want to go through all the assumptions that they're making, and then I'm going to get into the details of what's wrong with the assumptions that they're making. All right? Let's start, first of all, with how Science News reports this. Science News says, quote, tiny iron-rich fossils exhumed from the depths of the ancient ocean could reveal the cradle of life. Matthew Dodd, study co-author and a biogeochemist, says, quote, in a nutshell, what we found are the oldest microfossils on Earth, end quote. The rocks that hold the fossils came from Quebec and date somewhere between 4.28 billion and 3.77 billion years old, when Earth was still a baby. The next oldest microfossils reported are just under 3.5 billion years old, though their validity has been debated. Now, here's where the cracks start coming into this. Notice how Science News is about as evolutionary as you can get. But notice what starts happening with the language a little bit now. I want you to listen to what word starts this next sentence. If Dr. Dodd's structures truly are remnants of microbes, then it's fantastic, says astrobiologist Martin van Krandendijk. But he's not convinced. In fact, he says, quote, there's just not definitive proof that any of the textures or the minerals or features they have is unique of life, end quote. Then the piece goes on to say, claims of early life are frequently fraught with controversy. For one, says Dodd, quote, these are big claims. These are our origins, end quote. And scientists studying early life typically don't have a lot to work with. It's not like they're looking at dinosaur bones. In billions of years old microbes, obvious cellular bits and other familiar flags of life have often been stripped away. And in Earth's oldest rocks, extreme heat and pressure can cook and squash any remnants of life beyond recognition. The researchers spotted narrow tubes and filaments of the iron-rich mineral hematite that resemble those made by bacteria today. Now let's stop right here for a second, folks. In other words, there were these narrow tubes and filaments that are inside there. These narrow tubes and filaments could be just natural rock formations within inside the rock. But they also look similar to what bacteria can produce as well. So these narrow tubes and filaments could have been produced by bacteria, but they might not have been. So they don't know. But here's what happens. This guy, of course, this researcher, since this is his research, of course he's going to claim, hey, these were created by bacteria. This is life, what do you know? And so he sends out press releases everywhere saying, hey, we discovered 4.2 million year old life. Meanwhile, you have other evolutionary scientists who are saying, not so fast. We don't even know if this is life. It might be, it might not be. There's no way for us to know that. So I want to make sure everybody's clear that the evolutionary scientists themselves are debating about whether this is even really life or not. They're speculating. whether these are fossilized remnants of life from 4.2 billion years ago. Now, all the evolutionists pretty much agree with each other that these rocks are supposedly 4.2 billion years old. I don't agree. I say the rocks are less than 6,000 years old. I'll get to that in a little bit. But the evolutionists are saying, okay, fine, it's 4.2 billion year old rock. But we don't know if this stuff inside was produced by bacteria, by living organisms or not. It might have been, it might not have been. We just can't know that for sure. Science News goes on, quote, other hints, including a carbon signature of life in minerals such as apatite linked to biological activity, taken together, the hints add up to life. Biology is indeed one possible explanation, says astrobiologist Abigail Allwood of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She says, quote, but the evidence could equally be interpreted as non-biological. So let's stop right here, folks. An astrobiologist with NASA says, buried in the Science News story, I mean, yeah, life, biology, it could be biological. It could be from life 4.2 billion years ago, but it might not be also. It could be either way. We can't know. It could be equally not life. Says here, each line of evidence, she points out, reflects processes that look biological but really isn't. Then you have paleobiologist Dave Wasey. Now, these are all evolutionists that I'm quoting right now. He says, quote, the individual lines of chemical evidence are not particularly strong. But combined with microstructures, the authors do come up with a convincing biological scenario, but it's not really that strong, so we just don't know that this is life. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. When you see the news stories about this, fossilized life, 4.2 billion years old, has been found, let's, number one, establish the evolutionists themselves are debating with each other going, no, it could have been, might not be, we just don't know.